We're not getting into heaven because of our works.
No.
Nobody is perfect. That was a fear of mine growing up. I think just the concept of hell scared me.
Yeah.
Every single night, I would invite Jesus to come back into my heart.
You gotta cover your bases daily.
Just in case he left. I just died in your arms tonight. I've been singing that a lot today. At that full volume as well.
Very full volume.
Well, how else do you sing it?
Volume.
I don't know how else to sing it, really.
You don't know how else to sing it?
No.
Yeah, that's clear. We have like separate morning routines. Kind of like quiet time in the morning, you know, for us to each do our own thing. And then it's like once that's over, it's just like time.
All hell breaks loose.
Time to yell.
Sorry, all heck breaks loose.
Time for
it is. It's time for me to be flimsy, flamsy, and free.
Yep. With your vocal cords.
Yeah, we actually had to sit down and write out, like, because she, as you've heard on other podcasts, that she does much better with a regiment and planned out schedule.
Yes, I
so
do.
from, what is it, noon? Oh, something, yeah, like till noon. Until noon, it's like God time, workout time, self time, quiet time. But then once noon hits, it's loud time.
I guess it's loud time once noon hits.
Well, and everything, I think loud time's probably going to be all time.
Yeah,
once our kid comes.
Whenever he wants to be loud.
Yeah, exactly. So can't blame it on me anymore. I leave tomorrow.
You do.
How crazy.
I'm gonna cry.
I'm going to get a little touch up on the hair.
Yeah.
Going to my hair doctor, Dr. Bauman, shout out, to get some, just get it touched up a bit. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
And I'm also doing a podcast with him. So I think that
cool.
might be our next episode that you guys see. So we're going to talk all about hair loss, what causes it, you know, different types of things you can prevent, treatments. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. It's
and
cool.
informative.
I wish I could be
I know.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, Rumpf.
Sarah's at the point where she is recommended not to travel anymore.
Yeah. Technically.
Fly.
Technically Friday.
I know.
Or in a few days.
Yeah.
I could have pushed it with this, but I'm not being good.
Being good. I'm going to miss you. What are you going to do when I'm gone?
Be sad.
Be sad? Don't be sad the whole time.
I'll be productive.
Okay, great. I'll try to do the same.
Yeah.
But oh no. It doesn't happen often.
It doesn't.
Man.
That was a good one.
That was a good one. If you're wondering what we're talking about, just go back just a few seconds, probably 10 seconds, and listen to that crack, voice crack, the prepubescent voice crack.
Oh, that was good.
It was.
I thought it would be fun today when I was in my time with God, in my prayer time. I just felt a conviction to kind of share our testimonies. And I know that we have shared much of our backstory as far as our relationship goes. We've done episodes in the past where we interviewed each other, and certainly touched on that. But it's a question that we get pretty frequently in our DMs, or if we ever ask for like what people want to hear us talk about. A lot of the times, it's what's your testimony, and so I thought it might be nice to do a fresh episode that's just like that's what it is our testimonies.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Want to start?
Sure. Well.
Okay, we can go one word at a time.
Like back and forth?
Yeah. For your testimony.
I
went.
Nope.
Okay.
I'm already done.
All right. We won't do that.
Yeah, and I think it's especially if you don't have I don't have a dramatic beginning of my testimony. Like I grew up in a Christian home. I went to church pretty much my whole life. But I think the interesting parts of people's testimonies are when, if they did grow up Christian, when they discovered that for themselves, you know, versus it just being something that like, well, this is how I grew up and this is what I'm supposed to believe. When it becomes a conscious choice to pursue that relationship because you want it, not out of obligation or because it's what you were told you were supposed to do, you know? So for me, I grew up going to church. Did the whole Sunday school thing my whole life. And then we kind of stopped going to church once I got to high school, just because, I don't know, it didn't feel, the environment at the church we'd been going to didn't feel that great then.
That's shocking. It doesn't happen at church.
Yeah. Yeah. It just felt a little.
All churches are like perfect.
Yeah.
It's
right.
Weird.
Interesting how they're made up of people.
Yeah.
Who are never perfect.
Yeah.
But in that instance, it just felt a little like, I don't know, kind of cliquey. Mm-hmm. The church was, not just for like being in high school, but for adults as well. And it was kind of like showing up to show off your new purse or your new this, or I don't know. It was more of like a place to show off status versus a place to dive deeper into your relationship with God. Yeah. And so I didn't go to church much, actually, once we got to high school. And I also was just like, once I got to high school, I was very serious about dance and what I was doing with dance. So that was like my every evening, my weekends, like that's what I did. I didn't think that much about it. I didn't miss it necessarily. And then it just kind of, once it becomes not a habit in your life, then you're just used to that. Yeah. And actually, I think not going to church kind of started because maybe, what was I, 14? Maybe when I was going into high school, my brother had a back surgery. And my brother had spina bifida. If you haven't heard our backstory, my brother had spina bifida. And so he was paralyzed from the waist down, and was for his whole life. So he was getting a back surgery where they were putting a rod in his back to keep him straight. And it was meant to be a pretty routine surgery. But if I can even remember correctly, I believe when they finished his surgery, somehow there was a blockage of blood flow to his intestines. So in his recovery from his surgery, he was having like really like distended stomach, like very hard distended stomach. And they kept thinking they needed to like drain fluid and all these different things. And they couldn't really figure out why he wasn't recovering properly. And so then they went back in surgically to see what was going on and discovered that there had been a blockage of blood flow to his intestines, and like 80% of his intestines had died because of it. Oh, geez. So it was just like completely non-functional. So, and I will never forget that. Yeah. That moment, because the doctor almost didn't, that was when I was 14 and he was 11. And the doctor.
Is that like one of your earliest memories? Just because it stuck, like, because it was so prominent?
I wouldn't say it's one of my earliest memories because I was 14. Yeah. But it's one that I can like picture very clearly to this day.
Yeah, for sure.
And not even, it was all relayed to me by my parents. Mm-hmm. And so once the doctor saw that, the doctor wasn't even going to close him up. He was like, nope, this is not going to, like, he's not going to be able to eat. He's not going to be able to go to the bathroom. He's not going to be able to, like, he's not going to really, they were like, he's not going to make it. So they almost didn't even, they like, instead of stitching him up properly, they like stapled him closed fast. Oh. And then told my parents that they were like, I mean, the odds of him making it are low. He's probably never going to eat normally again. He's going to eat through a feeding tube for the rest of his life, if even that. Wow. And obviously my parents were like, well, can you complete what you went in there to do? Like, you're not telling me there's not a chance. Right. So no, we're not good with that. Right. And this was like, I remember I had a friend over at my house, and because my parents were at the hospital. So I was like, my brother was in the hospital. I was like here, there, and everywhere. I was at my grandma's. I had friends over, and then my friend's mom, I remember we were sleeping in the basement, and I heard a banging on the door, and she came in and was like, I gotta take you to the hospital right now. And so then I went to the hospital, and then my parents were like, And this is where like my memories become very vivid of like standing in the hospital with my parents and them being like, you know, this is what the doctor said, that he's probably not going to make it, whatever. And then cut to every single day, because he was like conscious. So every single day, like everything that they said was going to happen went the opposite direction. Like his vitals kept improving, everything, all the things that they were looking at were improving instead of declining. Long story short, he got out of the hospital. He did have a feeding tube for a time, but then got off of it and then had completely normal eating, completely normal, like bathroom. Like it was a total miracle.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he lived for another 11 years, right? After that.
Yeah. He was almost 24 when he passed away.
Oh, 24. I thought it was 25.
Yeah. He was almost 24. But he was 11 at that time. So.
Oh, he was 11. You were 14.
Yeah, I was 14.
Yeah. And you hear these stories like that, like yours and other people's where doctors say, you know, the chances are very slim, or his chances to live is like 3 months or 2 months or 1 month. And then they live for years. So you can like, they're human. Doctors are human.
Right.
And if you believe in a God and somebody who has, you know, eternal power and can heal people and can heal the sick and can do these things, then that's like they're giving their best educated guess, but they're not fortune tellers. That's really beautiful. I mean, we even have people in our life that went through a cancer battle, and you know, he was in his 40s. He was nearing the end. I mean, he was at a point where the doctor is telling the wife, like, you need to get your affairs in order because he might die, and kind of thing. And she just like did not accept it. Like that's gonna happen, whether it's a doctor, whether it's just the enemy. I'm not saying the doctors are enemies, but it's just like, you can't accept that stuff. Like can't accept that negativity or accept those things until it happens. Yeah. You know, it's like, why not believe the others, the better side of things, or the more hopeful side of things until something happens, because it hasn't happened yet. Right. It's not final. Right. And it's not that they're saying like he is dead. Right. Like he died. Right. Like definite. It's like, this could happen. It's like, no, don't tell me this. I don't accept this. I'm hopeful and I'm praying for the others, you know, a better way. And like, it's just cool to see how that has happened. So did that ignite kind of like your faith or something?
Well, it's funny because that was just such a big ordeal in our lives. So we weren't going to church at that time. And then and that's kind of why I started talking about it. And then we just never went back, because we weren't loving the environment in the first place. And then all of that happened and kind of took us out of the habit. That was definitely the first like miraculous thing I'd ever experienced in my life. And maybe people had told me stories before, but I had never seen something firsthand go so opposite of the way that we were told it was going to go. Like it couldn't have gone more opposite. And it was at every step of the process where it's like, oh wow, he's getting out of the hospital. Okay, well, he's going to have to eat through only a feeding tube for his whole life. No, wasn't true. Like completely ended up eating completely normally pretty quickly also. And like one day, literally his little feeding tube in his tummy just like fell out. And I should ask my parents about like the progression of him eating, because my brother loved food like I love food. Like he would try,
which is a lot.
He would try anything. He was not a picky eater. And so it was cool to see him like be able to do that again. You know, as a little boy, he's 11. Yeah. And so that was that was like the first time I ever experienced something miraculous like that in my life. And not that you need to experience something like that to believe. I don't think that you do. It's just something that happened to happen on my journey. But I still even after that, I've never, growing up in a Christian house, I've never gone through a period where I didn't believe in God, like where I didn't think that God existed, or where I was like completely the opposite of the way that I grew up. But I have definitely gone through many phases of being, what does it mean to me to be a Christian?
Yeah.
Where it's like, growing up, it was just like, I go to Sunday school and that's where my friends are and I have fun there.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And
then,
like, why do you believe what you believe?
Yes.
I think that's the biggest thing. Cause for me, yeah, I was the same way. Grew up in a Christian home and we went to church, and I went to church because my parents made us go to church.
Right.
And then I became an adult, and then, went to high school, I think I was still going to church then, but then went to college and then didn't really go to church, until I came out to New York City, started to go again a little bit, and then COVID happened, and then just, kind of like fell off a little bit. And then we're still trying to kind of pin down a home church, and figure that out. But I never went through a period of like, I don't know if there is a God. I never had a question in my mind about that.
No, me neither.
I like always figured I just like always assumed there was a higher power for sure, and a God, and somebody who created this beautiful world and universe. And like, now that you're pregnant, I mean, just that whole journey and aspect of it is insane to me. That's a miracle in itself, with how that happens. But I think it was more about figuring out, okay, well, why do I believe in this though? Like, am I believing in this just because my parents told me? Like, what's my side of it? Like, how am I? Because you want to get deep rooted in it, as opposed to just very surface level. Well, I've just always believed in it, which is just not a great argument.
Right.
If you are going to end
really
up,
for anything,
talking with somebody, it's just like, well, I've just always been like this.
Yeah.
I hate that
answer.
I hate that answer for so many things. Like working at a job, and you're like, why don't we do this way? That's a lot more efficient.
Right.
Because we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
But that way is not better. Like, that way's old. That way doesn't help anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's not as efficient. You could be doing things a lot better. Yeah, but it's just how we've always done it. I hate that answer. It's so lazy. It's such a lazy answer. Yeah. And so I didn't want that to be my answer. And so had to go on my own kind of journey with that, and still going on that journey to be honest, of really just getting more rooted and in my faith and why I believe in what I believe, and really more so just like the relationship. And that comes from time. Yeah. Having time with God. That, I know that seems pretty simplistic, but you think about a relationship, and if you want to grow in a relationship with your partner, or your son or your daughter, anyone, or your kids or your parents,
a friend,
it's time.
Yeah.
You have to spend time with them. And it's the same way with having a relationship with Jesus, having a relationship with God. It's, you have to carve out time to do that. And it's, I mean, speaking, candidly, it's pretty easy to forget to do that. You just go about your life.
Not even forget, to just not
do it. Just not do it because you're busy in your life.
Yep.
That you just can't find the time to spend like 10 minutes praying, or 10 minutes, just being in his presence. But man, when you do, or when I do, I notice a big difference in my day.
Yeah.
Especially if I start my day with, because I'll be honest, I'm not always pumped to read the Bible. I'm rarely pumped to read the Bible, just because I like, and I think that there's probably a mindset or an attitude that I can probably shift with that. I'm just like, oh man, it's kind of like it's like deep. It is deep. And I just find myself always just rereading the Gospels because I'm like, these are more fun to read and more digestible. Whereas some of the older stuff or some of the other books are just harder to digest.
But sometimes when you get into like because I'm reading the Old Testament in a year, and there are definitely parts that I have slogged through. I'm looking at you, Leviticus. But it like the beginning of the Bible, like Genesis and Exodus, I find absolutely.
Well, they have great stories.
Yes, just great, and that's sprinkled all throughout the Old Testament. We know there's great stories in the New Testament because that's the Gospels.
Yeah,
but
Old Testament
in the Old Testament,
bangers.
Man, there's some really good stories, some really bizarre stories that I would love to like hear God talk about once we're on the other side. But
why did this happen?
Yeah, what was that? But some stories that just like keep me like it's like reading a good book, and I'm just like, oh, I can't wait to find out what happens. Even though a lot of the time I already know what happens, it's still just like there's just such great stories and great lessons. I've come to appreciate the Old Testament a lot more the more that I read it.
Well, I will say I find myself when I start to read and I kind of get into it, then I start to like, I enjoy it. Once I'm into it, it's, I think starting it of like, oh, all right, here we go, kind of a thing. But then once I get going and, once I'm reading and something is, I'm just looking for something. I think the way that I've started reading is I'm trying to find one thing that stands out that I needed to hear for the day or that I can apply for the day. As opposed to just kind of reading 8 chapters, and then not really getting anything from it. You're just like reading to read.
Yes.
And so I think that's been my approach as of late of like, okay, what is like a verse that is a standout that I needed to hear or that I could apply today and try to like reread that several times. And cause I know that there's power in memorization and I've learned some through, songs from Bible, church, like choir.
Sure.
Like, I don't know if you put this in the comments, if you know what this is, but GT, do you know GT? If somebody knows GT that is watching this or listening to this, I will lose my mind.
I had never heard of this before.
Yeah.
Micah.
GT and the something choir. So GT he's an angel and then comes down and helps these kids and then we sing and it's always verses.
And then we sing.
So I was GT, not to brag. So there's GT and then there's Salty in the Singing Songbook. Do you know this one?
No, only because of you.
Okay, so GT and Salty, if you know what they are, put it in the comments right now. I will lose my mind. It'll be amazing. But that's how I learned, and they stick. There's some VeggieTales. Yeah. Like there's some to those songs that it'll stick a lot better than just memorizing words.
Absolutely.
But I know that there is a lot of power in memorization, especially when it comes to overcoming maybe something that you're struggling with. I've heard about that with like my porn addiction. In learning, it's like memorizing specific Bible verses or something to try to like or to speak against.
Sure.
When you're struggling through something, whether it's that or you have you're financially, you're not doing, you want to be better in your finances, just like search money or search finances or financial, and then just read those verses. I think that's a helpful way too. Like if you're going through a particular season that you're wanting maybe some reinforcement or help in, you could look up keywords to find verses.
We have everything at our fingertips now. Yeah. Just look up verses about blank and so much will pop up.
Yeah. I relate, which I'm sure every Christian does and every person does, whether you're a Christian or not. but like to Paul's famous verse in Romans where he's like, I do the things that I don't want to do, and I don't do the things that I want to do. Which is Paul, who's considered just like one of the
the best Christians ever.
I was like, quote unquote, best Christians.
Number one Christian.
If there was a ranking, if there was a bracket, Paul would be at the very least the final two, if not the champion.
Paul's got the Lombardi trophy.
I think so.
For Christianity.
Who would be, that would be a fun bracket to do. We should do a Bible, Bible characters bracket.
How do you even start? Well, wait.
Jesus can't be in it. That's not fair.
Moses.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Abraham.
Yeah. But I feel Moses like Moses
might be. You really? Moses over Abraham?
I think so, because he led the people to the promised land. Now, he didn't get to go in. He didn't get to go in.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Because he struck the rock when he was only supposed to talk to it. I was literally just reminiscing about this today because I was reading something about...
I know, it's so funny.
What was I reading? Was it in my Bible? Oh, no, it's a parenting book that I'm reading.
Oh.
They're talking about the words that you speak and letting anger get the best of you. And it was just talking about how like Moses is like pretty up there in the eyes of God.
Right.
And he even had a moment where his anger got the best of him and he did not get to go to the promised land because of his anger.
Sorry, God, but that's a little rough. That's a bit rough.
Sorry, Moses.
Yeah, sorry, Moses. But also, like, man, God, like, that seems just like a little strong. Where
look at that lesson, though.
Yeah, but he's like, but Moses was expected to be absolutely perfect. Like he couldn't have one moment of anger.
Well,
and then the 40 plus years that he spent with the Israelites and helping them get to the promised land, he didn't get to experience it. That seems just a bit strong. Yeah.
Well, the lesson wasn't. I don't think the lesson was for so much for Moses as it is for us.
No, I know. Oh, you mean he did like that happened so that we could learn. Uh-huh. Sorry, Moses. Oh, I'm sure he's fine.
We'll talk about it when we get there.
Yeah, I'm sure he's not worried about it anymore. But that's true. Moses that's a big character.
Yeah.
Joshua's pretty big. David.
Yeah,
David's pretty up there. He might go to the final four.
Maybe.
But again, yeah, all these people, I think that is something that's really powerful to learn from all these characters is like we're not getting into heaven because of our works.
No.
Because nobody is perfect.
Yep.
And I think that's a fear. That was a fear of mine growing up. I think at times, and it wasn't from my parents at all, or even our church. There wasn't like this fear mongering or like fire and brimstone, but I think just the concept of hell scared me.
Yeah.
And so every single night I would invite Jesus to come back into my heart.
Cover your bases daily.
Just in case. Yeah. Just in case he left, just in case he went away. Or I did something, or I lied, or I called, my brother a butthead, and then that he was like, oh, I'm out of here. So I invited him back into my heart every single night, and asked for forgiveness every single night, because I was like, if I die in my sleep, I got to make sure that I'm covered here. So, but there's I think there's just so much. There is so much to those stories, like David being the king and kind of like the chosen one, and then who
just
ends
kind of
up
becoming the worst for a second.
Just for a second.
Yeah.
But just like somebody of that who just loves God so much.
Yeah.
And yet falls to lust.
Yeah.
Kills the husband. But then the redemption story is just like super powerful. Yeah. Peter denies like he would be probably his rock. Right? Isn't that
what he said?
What it is? Mm-hmm. Like, right? Mm-hmm. Peter the rock, like the leader, he's like the big disciple. Denies him 3 times. Denies Jesus 3 times. Mm-hmm. Everybody has kind of like that moment. Moses hitting the rock. Eve, just the worst. It all started with Eve, of course. Just joking. Just waiting for the comments to absolutely eviscerate me. That was all for the comments.
Yeah.
No. But it's, you see there is a lot of power in that and I think peace, knowing that you don't have to be a perfect person.
No.
Nobody is.
You can't be.
The idea is that you strive to be like Jesus every day.
Yeah.
You're going to fall and you're going to have tendencies or maybe past traumas and past things that you've gone through and that where you are going, that's going to be kind of your hot button. The thing that you probably need to work on the most. It's probably going to be the thing that you work on your whole life. The weakness, whatever that is. But I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. Do you?
I mean, we've gone way off topic from our testimonies. But
yeah, well,
I like it. It's good.
All that being said is, well, yeah, I was talking about my testimony. That's kind of where I was going. So here we go. We're back on the train. You've gone through a lot of different moments and, hard times. I've gone through different hard times and I don't know, for me, in those, like my uncle, took his life and when I was in high school and he was like the fun uncle. We all loved him so much. And it was just like one of those like shocks. My cousin, died in a car accident at 16 years old, like a mile or a half a mile from her home. Different things. We had a miscarriage. You had your brother, pass away, all these things that happen. But was there ever, like, in those moments, did they ever make you question or wrestle with like God or question him at all, or just be like, why did you let this happen? I feel like that's a common thing.
It is. But no, I did my wrestling with God before my hardest times in my life. Like I did my, what do I believe? Do I believe this? Is this? And never not believing that there was a God. I always believed in God, Jesus, the whole shebang.
The Holy Spirit. Yeah.
But I did have like a phase where I went through that's like, well, maybe like parts of the Bible aren't true and like parts are,
Oh, sure.
And then I came to realize that that's just not how it works. And, but I did my like grappling with, if I'm saying, if this is going to be my belief system, then I'm also subscribing to all of these other things. And not that I understand all of these other things or that they all make sense to me, because they don't, and they never will on this side of eternity, but that's okay. And so before I went through my hardest times, I had already spent a lot of time investing in my relationship with God as an adult. Because when I moved to New York, I didn't go to church in college either. And I went to a Methodist college. But I never went to church during college. And then when I moved to New York, I wanted to go back to church. So I went back to like a Presbyterian church because I grew up in a Presbyterian church and that felt very comfortable to me. And then started going to Hillsong because friends went to Hillsong and I wanted to go with friends but never like got plugged in at a church necessarily. And then amidst all that, I worked on a cruise ship, and really the cruise ship was when I really solidified my relationship with God as an adult. And that was like a year after I graduated college. And so I spent a lot of time with God when I was doing that contract, and just a lot of time in his word, a lot of time praying, a lot of time just like talking to him. I spent a lot of time by myself, which meant that I did a lot of talking with God, all throughout the day. And that, I believe that time invested equipped me for everything I went through a handful of years later.
Yeah.
Equipped me to not have any kind of doubt or anger when I lost my brother, to not have any kind of doubt or anger when I went through the marriage, my first marriage, like, to not even have doubt or anger in our miscarriage.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that the deeper rooted I get with God, the more I realize that it's exactly like having an earthly relationship. And that when we put that time in on the front end, then when something hard happens in a relationship, you know that the relationship isn't going to go anywhere because you already did the investing on the front end when things were easier, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I think that's how marriage is. I think that's how friendships can be, where it's like, no, we already know what we are to each other. And that's not going to change just because we're going through a hard season or we had a hard conversation or whatever it may be.
Right.
You know? So I think that time on the cruise ship, I planted a lot of seeds that then sprouted into the fruit that stayed strong and healthy when I actually went through hard times. So the hardest times in my life drew me closer to God versus separating me from him. 'Cause it's like, if I can't rely on the ultimate source, who am I going to rely on?
I feel like those moments brought me closer to God than away from him because I prayed harder and I spent more time with him, which is sad a little bit. I mean, for me, it's a little sad because the only time that I really dig in and I want to spend more time is when I'm hurting and when I want something, which is not right.
It's not even that you want something. It's just that no one else can heal the hurt besides him.
Right. Yeah. So it never would make sense to me to push away somebody that could actually help and heal.
I think it's very common though that it's the lowest times that draw people closer to God. And I think about that often because I'm like, hold on, I'm going to draw close to you even though I'm in a really fruitful season. Like I don't need a reminder that I need to be close to you. And I don't actually think that's how, it's not that I'm saying that that's how he works necessarily, but so I have, as a human, I have had the thought of where I'm like, you don't have to bring any trials.
I know, me too. I feel that way too.
I'm gonna spend time with you, even though I'm in a fruitful season.
Yeah,
I was
about to ask that because I get that way sometimes too. When we're in a season of fruit and blessings and things are happening really well. And I wonder if there's got to be a term for this or maybe even a psychological thing. But then I'm worried. I'm kind of in the back of my mind, I'm like, everything is temporary. And typically from a highs, there's a low that happens. And so then it's when is this going to end? When's this high going to end? And then I kind of screw up the moment, and then I screw up just being present and being grateful and excited for what's happening in the moment because I'm kind of in the back of my mind thinking, when's the shoe going to drop? Yeah. And it is. I mean, I agree that everything is temporary. Every season is temporary, but goods and bads.
Yeah. But I also think that it's what I choose to, obviously we go through hard things that are valleys, but it sort of goes like this and then kind of plateaus versus up and down,
right,
you know?
Yeah.
And then you have that and then you kind of do this and then maybe you have a little, I don't know. I think that's that's why it's so important to, in the times where it is going on the up and up, to stay so plugged into him because the more you have in any capacity, the more relationships, the more finances, the more influence, the more of anything, the more that we need him.
Right.
And
the more dependence you need.
Yes. And the more plugged in to like help me steward what you're doing in my life well, so that I can just do the right thing and not be, again, not going to be perfect, but today when I was praying, I was thinking a lot about that and just praying for just wisdom, Bible talks about how we pray for wisdom. He'll give it to us. And that's something that I've, especially with entering into parenthood, I'm like, just give me wisdom, please.
Heavens.
Like I'll do everything I can on my end, reading, discerning from the people around us who are great parents. But ultimately I feel like I'm gonna need divine wisdom for my own son, because he's not going to be like anyone else's kid.
Yep.
Every kid is different. Every person is different.
Mm-hmm.
So very long answer.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't doubted.
Why would you kind of like maybe the last question here. Why do you believe in Christ? Why do you believe in God?
I've seen too much evidence come to pass in my life to not believe. Like when you look at the word of God in the Bible and what he promises to us, I've seen too much of that happen in my life to not believe. And it's not to say that I believe because he gives me what I ask for, because he hasn't always given me everything that I've asked for.
Nope.
By any stretch of the imagination.
Still waiting for $1 million.
It's just plopped down from nowhere. No, but just in regards to, like when we were told we were going to have a miscarriage, and I was kind of like, well, you said that the odds are high. Going back to what we were talking about at the beginning.
Right,
it's like, so that means I can believe for something miraculous. Mm-hmm. And that's not what happened.
Right.
I see too much of what is there on the page alive in my life on a day-to-day basis.
Well, it just wasn't our plan either.
Yeah.
It just wasn't the plan for us for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And who knows why? We won't know why. Mm-hmm. We believe it's so that we can help other people, hopefully, and at least bring a light to it, or bring exposure to how common it is, so that other people can feel less alone in it. But, the real, whether that's the real reason or not, that's just what we believe.
That's like my earthly reasonings.
Yeah, right.
Is always like, okay, well, what can I learn and how can I help someone else because I've experienced this?
Right.
But yeah, as far as the real, we're probably never going to know why.
Again, we might later.
Till we get, exactly, till we get to the other side.
Right.
Then everything becomes clear. But yeah.
That's a good answer. Good job.
What about you?
It's just a feeling.
Yeah.
I just feel better when I pray and when I get into his word, and I've seen miracles that have happened. And, the people that say that miracles don't happen nowadays, that's just untrue. Mm-hmm. It's just not true. Mm-hmm. They happen probably daily. Mm-hmm. We just don't. They're just maybe smaller, or we just don't see them. Mm-hmm. I've just found the principles of Jesus and to be fruitful in our life.
Right.
The principles and the values that Jesus teaches and that you learn from Jesus, you live a pretty good life, and it's yielded a lot of fruit in our life and a lot of peace. And I think that's my answer. All right. Ready? Let's finish it off. Uh-oh. Finish it off with some trivia. Oh, I have the answers. Sorry, it's just going to be you. So, here's some intermediate questions. Ready?
Intermediate. We can't start
Who
with
led
easy?
the Israelites into the promised land after Moses' death?
Aaron?
Nope. Oh boy, we're off to a rough start. Joshua.
Well, you didn't give me a little bit longer to talk about think about it.
What was the name of Abraham's wife?
Sarah.
Good job. What apostle is known for doubting Jesus' resurrection until he saw him?
Thomas.
Yep. What was the name of David's best friend, who was also the son of King Saul?
Hold on. It's going to come to me.
Really?
Yeah, it is. Jonathan.
Yep. Good job. How many days and nights did it rain during the flood?
Oh, 40?
Yes. Okay, now these are the challenging questions. There's 5.
No.
These are Chat GPT. I literally just typed in I typed in Bible trivia and these are what came up. All right, ready? 5. This is 5 questions. What were the names of Jacob's 12 sons?
Wow, Jacob's 12 sons. Okay.
Ready? Just start.
Reuben.
Uh-huh.
Joseph.
Yep.
Benjamin.
Come on. We were you in the musical?
I was in the musical.
Well,
but I'm like, but what are...
You got 3.
What are all the... I know.
That's it? All right.
Simeon, it's going to take me too long to think of them.
Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun.
Yeah, see, I'm like, those are all floating around in here somewhere.
I know, same. I wouldn't have got it. And I was Joseph. All right. Who was the prophet that confronted King Ahab and the prophets of Baal on the Mount Carmel?
Elijah?
Yep. Wow. What is the name of the person who interpreted dreams for Pharaoh and later became a high official in Egypt?
That's Joseph.
Yes. In which book of the Bible is the Song of Songs found?
Isn't it Song of Songs or Song of Solomon?
Yes. I'm sorry, Chat GPT, you could do better. Who is the first Christian martyr mentioned in the New Testament?
Ooh, Stephen?
Yep. And that was a brutal one.
Yeah, that was a
brutal one. Getting stoned to death is just, you would hope that like you get hit in the temple or something and you get knocked out. And so then it's, you don't really feel after that. But that's a rough way to go.
That's a very rough way to go.
So we'll end on that.
Well, that was fun.
Yep, we'll end on that, and as we always do. But before we end, please subscribe to our channel. Whether it's Apple, we're on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube. Subscribe, like, comment. We just greatly appreciate it, and we're going to continue to have different interviews and people come on, and our whole hope is that this adds value to people and gets people, thinking, I guess.
Yeah.
So
thinking and feeling.
As we always end our podcast, we end them by singing goodbye. I think that was not terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't awful.
It wasn't.
No.